Okay, so this is probably going to be a commentary on the 1429 I got in Sonic Riders Hero Story about a week ago. Part of this commentary is going towards Cybersonic as he wants to learn the Splash Canyon skip. So I just decided, well, let's just do the entire thing. So it's going to be pretty quick. I'm setting up all the games and all this stuff, so the commentary is going to probably go by pretty fast. So if you have any questions, ask below, or just quickly go back and rewatch the segment again. So the first stage is Metal City. The number one thing you must always do is spam start to get rid of all cutscenes. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump off this first ramp forward with a forward flip, and then dash across this middle section. And then you're going to jump when you're about 2 rings into that line of rings in order to grab the 100 capsule. It takes a little bit of practice, but you can get it. Now, we jump off of this second jump over here because it's much faster than actually doing a trick, and you'll always have enough air after going up this ramp to get to sort of like do the next section right here, which is to dash and do a drift. Now we do a backflip in order to get to the shortcut, and that's where you get a double S. And then the second jump, you always want to get an X so you can grab 100 air. Now for the second lap, what you want to do is you want to do a forward flip, but not up to the second area. You want to do it up to the bottom area so you get more air going down on the railing. And on the second and third laps, you're going to notice that I take the tricks here. What this allows me to do is it gives me enough air to skip that ramp over there, which saves about half a second. And as you notice, I'll still have enough air going into this next section. I'm going to go do a backflip, and then another X rank trick, and we head into lap 3. Now lap 2 and 3 are generally the same. There's nothing special about those two in comparison with each other. As a safety strat, if you ever want to avoid having to waste a ton of air on this section right here, you can take the ramp on the left and then take the grind rail on top. If you have enough air though, it's not necessary to take that rail up there, which is what I did during lap 1. Because I got a capsule with 30 air in it in the first lap. And that should finish off Metal City. A good time for Metal City would be anything 156 or lower. In this case, I got a 154, which is very good. I think the best I've ever gotten is a 153, very high 153. And next up we have Splash Canyon. Now Splash Canyon is home to the infamous Splash Canyon skip, which I'll have to explain in more detail as I'm going to do it 3 times in a row. The first thing you want to do is jump down. You want to rush out and do 3 boosts. 3 dashes, and you want to angle yourself such that you get on this top area, and you want to take the right side. The 230 ring capsules are very important here, and as you're going to make your trick, you want to put down a tornado and stop behind this and start spamming the start button going through. Now there's something a little bit special about this first lap. I actually did not angle my control stick correctly, so I ended up holding down and to the right. This is not that big of a deal. If you end up doing something similar to what I did here, it's not all's not lost. You just have to make sure that your drift heading into the start line doesn't cause you to go too far back. Now here's where you actually do the trick correctly. What you're supposed to do is you want to hold down and right as you are heading towards the back side of the flying pad. And what this will let you do is that if every single time you spam start, the game will hold your last known recent input or set of inputs for about half a second. And if you keep spamming start correctly, then it will hold that drift for you. And then you can use the boost and the drift to help you get out of bounds and go straight to the exit, which skips about half of the level. I'm going to do it again here. And you're going to notice that I'm always starting on the left side of the back side of the flying pad. This is important because if you start anywhere on the right side, you're going to end up hitting an invisible wall right above the fence. So you want to make sure you start drifting towards the right, and you also start on the left side of the back side of the flying pad. Now, the time I got there was pretty decent. I ended up with near a 4-minute mark for the splits. That's pretty good. You want to end up anywhere around 4 minutes flat. Next up is Egg Factory. It's not really difficult. The run itself is pretty explanatory. There are no special tricks or anything. The only thing that you really need to worry about is on lap 1, you want to grab this rightmost ring capsule, which holds 3 rings, to immediately get yourself up to level 2. And that's pretty much it. Everything else, if you've casually played this game before, and I'm trusting that any speedrunners of this know about these shortcuts, you don't really need to worry much about air consumption. The one thing I do recommend that you also realize that in lap 1, you should not grab any of the capsules on that first line right before the 100 ring capsule. And the reason why is because the game does not let you grab multiple capsules in a row within like a 2-second or like a 1-second delay period. And what happens is that if you grab the air capsule or the ring capsule on that first row and try to grab the 100 too quickly, the 100 will get canceled out and you're not going to actually go up to level 3. Okay, so again with the shortcut, Link 2 is not generally a good idea for that shortcut. You want to get at least Link 4 or 5. That way you can get all your air back. So you can see that Link 2 caused me to get less air than I'm supposed to. And there you go. Well, that's lap 3. That's coming in right now. There are no real threat areas. On the left side of the beginning of the lap, you'll notice that I'm always grabbing a 100 air during laps 2 and 3. That's going to stay constant. The leftmost 3 capsules, I believe, are 100 air capsules, so that should help you immensely with trying to get your air back. It's effectively worth an X rank trick, which is really nice. And you never want to take the right side. Keep in mind, you always want to go inside, but you want the game to sort of hit you to the inside of that machine area so that you always end up going on the left side of the track. That makes things a lot faster when you're going through the railing part to get to the end of the lap. Alright, next up is Green Cave. So Green Cave has a skip in the beginning that saves about 5 to 7 seconds if you get on the first lap, and about 4 or 5 seconds on every subsequent lap. It's imperative that you get it every single time, although here I missed it on lap 2. So the first lap is very good. What you want to do is set a visual marker for yourself. If you're going to notice, there are 3 white triangles at the top there. You want to aim so that you jump off the second triangle heading towards the left. If you clip through the fence, you'll know that you got it correctly. Now for this part, you're going to notice that I prematurely pressed the jump button in order to slam myself down on that middle rope, or that middle vine right there. Normally speaking, you won't be able to get there via the flying rings. So instead, after that second flying ring, I just immediately slam down in order to grab that 100 ring. And you're going to do this on every single lap. So you're going to notice that I fail on lap 2 because I sort of hit the fence. If you hit the fence, there's no way you can recover from it. The amount of speed that you're going to have going through to that, it's a one-shot trick. If you fail it, there's no point in getting the skip. And as another word of caution for that same trick, what happens is if you're far left enough, the instant you hit the bottom, or once you land the trick that you do, which by the way should be an A rank or higher, double A is recommended, you want to immediately drift left. And you want to do a hard drift left, but you don't want to drift too hard left to the point where you actually fall off. So I'm going to show you, this is going to be a third lap, which works. So you're going to notice that I land prematurely, boom, and I do a drift off to the left. And that will help you get across Green Cave pretty easily. One other word of caution, you want to make sure that if you're doing that trick, you don't hold the jump button. You just want to tap the jump button as you're about to do the jump itself. If you hold the jump button, you're going to be flying way too far forward, and that's not going to give you enough clearance room to sort of clear that fence on the left side. So if you'll know you did it correctly if you clip out of the left side fence right during the jump, and you sort of land on the lower side of the vine before the main track hits. And then begins Sand Hill, or not Sand Hill, what am I thinking? Sand Ruins. Sand Ruins, the first thing you want to do for this stage is, if you are lucky, the CPUs will rush out the gate with the most optimal speed, and this way you can grab air on your first boost by hitting them. In that case, Tails is probably was being a nice friend and letting him hit him for extra air. What that allows you to do is that it gives you 3 extra boosts to reach that first ramp. And the first thing that you're going to see me do is that I'm going to skip that railing right that you just saw there. It wastes time. This is pretty self-explanatory. You don't need to jump on upon taking that ramp on the left side for that section. It's not necessary. For here, the first 2 laps are going to have you rounding that entire corner. Ooh, that was pretty bad. That was probably like a half-second loss. Not a big deal. And then the 3rd lap, if you're lucky, you can skip that entire set of pillars rising up against you. Now, I take the right side of this just because it's a little bit faster, and those packets on the right may sometimes give you air, which is crucial to the stage because this stage's hard points is simply just air consumption. Now, for the first lap, you're going to notice that I went to the right side of that line of packets that we just passed. The right side holds 10, 20, and 30 rings. You want to make sure you get the rightmost. That's level 2. And then the left side holds air. So you want to take the left side for laps 2 and 3 so you can grab some air. Notice I'm going to round about this corner again. Nothing serious. Going to head into lap 3. Now you're going to notice I end up with about half air here. You should never try to use more air than you think you could have. I got pretty lucky by getting some random air capsules along the way. But if you don't have enough air, do not try to overuse it, because especially during this part, if you don't have air, you're going to fall off and lose all of your levels, which would pretty much mean a run over if you're not careful enough. Again, we ignore the right side of that rail because it's slower. You're just going to head back up with the same track again. And for lap 3, if you are fast enough and your AIs are stupid enough, sometimes those pillars, they will reset right after the other 3 characters decide to go through the goal line. That way, you don't need to worry about them rising up again to hit you along the way of going around that big bend. And that saves about 3 seconds, which is really useful. But sometimes it doesn't happen, so it's pretty much RNG. Now we head into Babylon Garden. This stage is very easy in my opinion. It's not really that difficult. The tail stages are way more difficult for this run just because of the different skips you have to be able to pull off and the sort of positioning and the speed that you have to be at in order to pull them off correctly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to rush straight through out the gate, perform an X trick, go through the grind rail, which you do not need to jump on, by the way. You can jump on it for a B rank trick before you hit that grind rail. But it's not necessary. And then we're just going to go up to Turbulence and go through this part right here. Ideally, you can get to a speed about 242, 243. Ideally, you want to get to that speed at some point during that segment. It means that you hit the maximum speed as fast as possible. And we're going to grab this 100 ring here. If you don't grab this 100 ring, it's not the end of the world, but getting to level 3 is very important for the first lap because you need to get the air in order to be able to handle the next set of areas correctly. What level 3 does is that it gives Sonic an extra limit on his speed. And what that allows him to do is that it keeps his 250 speed boost for much longer than the level 1 speed boost will do. And a level 1 speed boost also gives you 200 speed and only lasts for about a third of the time that the level 3 speed boost does. Now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to take one trick up the Turbulence, and this shows up only on the second and third laps because you're too fast on the first lap to actually see those arrow markers pop up as the first turbulence is being created. So for the second and third laps, we take that right side and we don't take the left side again. So we don't do a second trick up there because it's just faster to take that 399 speed and just go straight through without having to boost ourselves up to 450. The speed gain is much more minimal there. And as a little optimization, you don't really need to wait until you hit the end of the jump on that last part of the lap in order to actually perform your X rank trick. You can just jump straight up once you touch the ramp itself. Alright, and then lap 3 is pretty much the same, so not much to say here. So I'm going to take this again. I'm not going to take the left side because although it gives me more speed, the time it takes for you to actually land it is much longer than if you just simply put the 399 going through all the way to this next section. And you're going to notice something interesting as well is that I always take the grind rail here. It's better just because you have more air later on. I personally don't think it really matters if you take the grind rail or not, but it's useful either way. And we don't take the jump because, of course, it's slower. So the right side, I do 2 double boosts, and I just simply go around the bend. You want to avoid trying to fall off the bend because that'll send you back to level 1 and it'll waste a lot of time. So don't do that. Always take the chances and don't try to hit yourself on any parts of the walls. And there you go. That's the 1429. Very, very good. A few quick notifications. Thank you to DSS for his recorded video of his run. It gives me a lot of practice and sort of knowledge on what I was supposed to do during the run. And thank you to all the Summit runners for the support that they've given to me over my practice the last week. So thank you guys. You guys are awesome. One last thing to note, after you finish your run, it's generally good courtesy to sort of prove that the run was actually yours and you just didn't splice a bunch of videos together. So this is why what I do after every run is, well, you don't need to show the cutscenes. I just keep it there because I was crazy happy when this happened. You can skip these cutscenes, you can skip the credit scene, and then you go to the shop. And what the shop does is that it shows the ring count up to the point that you've actually played it. So this works for 2 good things. Number 1 is that right after you exit the credits, it'll show that you've unlocked Babylon's Story and all of the different characters and such. That's already one point that shows that you're playing on a new file. The second thing is that going to the shop shows your ring count that you would see after you finish this stage. And in this case, it's 44. If you go back and you go check how many rings I had at the end when I got first place, it was 484 rings. And if you go to the shop, it'll also say 84 rings. So that's very useful to know, at least for the grader's point of view. All right. I think the only real trick that requires more thorough explanation would be the Splash Canyon skip. The Green Cave skip isn't really that difficult. It involves only 1 button press plus another drift in the correct position. The Splash Canyon skip, however, involves a ton of button presses. You're going to notice that I spammed start over on that section like a lot. Don't do that. Like I did start. Well, okay, in this case, I bound my start button to square because my start button is very, very awkward on the PlayStation 4 controller. So instead, I did square. So like I just spammed the hell out of it, and that's what you saw. Ideally, you don't want to do that when you're starting to practice out. I recommend doing square. So give your thumb or your index finger or whatever's pressing the start button a bit of leeway time so that your muscles won't just stop and freeze and not actually press the start button when you need to. And that will be a very good practice. If you want to just test it out, keep in mind that it doesn't have to be on that stage. You can test this out on a wide drift anywhere. So you would just start a drift to the left or the right. You would just press start once, let go of the drift button because it's going to hold your input anyway. And to test that you actually did it correctly, you just keep spamming doubles of start buttons every like quarter of a second or so. So you do start or you do a drift, start, and then while you're still in the start screen, you get rid of that drift button. You do start, and make sure that your analog stick is pointing in the correct direction as well. That'll be a lot more useful for practice. I recommend you do it in the first area of Splash Canyon when you are, when you're playing as Tails. That way you can set up for the skip if you're on the same lap and you're just trying to test it out. But yeah, there you go. So that's Sonic Riders in 1429. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'm out.